Do you believe now? No, I do not believe now.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Intercepted! Rod Moore! And Michigan will win the game! Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvelous!
Hail, hail, Michigan, the champions of college football.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, proud to be part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
This is The Rivalry Podcast. Jace, JP, your garbage-free college football podcast focused on the Ohio State-Michigan football rivalry. At RivalPod across social media, and rivalpod.com is the hub for photos, articles, and to listen. If you're not on YouTube right now, you can jump on there too. Again, that's at RivalPod. This is college football sports talk without all the tangents and focused on that last Saturday in November. We're going to spin the wheel route here to break the ice. I don't want to do this episode.
I am so ready.
I don't want to do this episode today.
From about 4:00, weirdly enough, on Saturday, that's really when I kind of felt ready.
Early season Heisman front runner. Ooh, man. I mean,
It's so obviously wide open.
yeah, I mean, wide open, but I don't feel like the guys that were at the top of the list in the preseason have really gone anywhere.
Mhm.
I mean, frankly, the
So
easy
who did you have at the start?
for Heisman. I don't know that I had a Heisman pick, but I'm just saying like the guys who were like betting favorites early on haven't gone anywhere. I mean, I think you got to tip your cap this week if you're Michigan and say Quinn Ewers has got to be up there. I mean, that guy is the real deal. I don't know that there's a quarterback playing right now that is playing better than Quinn Ewers through 2 games. I just don't think that there is. So I'll go Quinn Ewers right now.
I think there is a quarterback that's playing better.
Hold on. Okay. You've got a quarterback that's playing better.
But I will say that quarterback hasn't necessarily played competition like Quinn Ewers did. I mean, Quinn Ewers had a great game. Yeah. We'll talk about it obviously later on.
Are you thinking Jalen Milroe?
Jackson Dart, Ole Miss.
Okay.
I just right now he's putting up video game numbers. He's got 795 yards on the season, 6 touchdowns, just 2 games into the year. I mean, that's just insane.
I'm pretty sure you're the guy that told me that Ole Miss was a pretender when I insisted that they were an actual real deal title contender.
You can still be a pretender and still have a very good football player on your team. Let that be known. Jackson Dart, a stud. Do I still believe in Ole Miss? They might change my mind.
Okay.
But right now I'm still 50-50. I'm leaning more 50-50 than a pretender, but I do love Jackson Dart. And his game is just so nice.
And you've obviously still got guys like Jalen Milroe, Carson Beck, Dylan Gabriel. Here's the thing.
He had 90-something yards and it was the fourth quarter.
I think I fell asleep at some point late in the third quarter or mid third quarter, and it was a close game. And then I come back and they won by a ton. Mm-hmm. They won by a ton. So Alabama needs to stop scheduling USF. That's why really if you're a Crimson Tide fan,
wasn't that last year too?
Yeah, last year was like 17-10.
I feel like I remember us being at Michigan for a game.
It was the Bowling Green week, and everyone around us is kind of looking like
Bowling
what
Green
was
first
happening?
Off in Penn State. Wow.
And then finally, just before we jump in, we'll jump into Ohio State here, but shout out to Northern Illinois. Okay. What a delight.
What a cool moment.
What a delight.
What a cool moment. I had just gotten to the shoe. So I had just shown up.
Because for perspective, we had split off this weekend. I was up in Ann Arbor. You were in Columbus. Yes. And so I listened to this game driving home while you were. I had just gotten into the shoe. I was down on the field taking some pictures. I actually remember the exact location I was at on the field. I was close to where Ohio State runs out of the tunnel. And they put the end of that game up on the huge Jumbotron, up on the big screen, so that people that were in attendance could see the end of the game. And the cheers, there weren't that many people in the stands yet. They were all kind of still filing their way in. But the cheers that went through the stadium when Northern Illinois blocked that kick, amazing.
Music to my ears.
The only thing that I didn't care for, and I thought this in real time, and then I saw other folks mention this after, is I was listening to the NIU radio call of that second half driving back from Ann Arbor. And so NIU kicks the field goal and it's good and they're going nuts and whatever. When they called the blocked field goal, the way that the guy screamed, blocked, 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 What sounded like App State, Michigan. And I thought it in real time, and I was like, no. I'm a little PTSD, that's all. And I saw other folks start to comment the same thing.
I saw that same exact radio call being tweeted out a million times, and I kept saying, I need to go back and actually listen to that. I need to go back. Do you think that I have yet? No. But now I'm going to because
it's phenomenal. And it was one of those things, too, where like listening to it in the moment on the drive, I'm going, if this is no good or if they block, like, this is going to be an all-time call for this school. Yes. I mean, that is the biggest upset in NIU history. I know they beat Alabama a long, long time ago, and that was kind of their big one. They were talking about on the broadcast. This is bigger.
Yeah. At Notre Dame.
And by the way, as an aside, what does that mean for Notre Dame and their playoff hopes? Because when they beat A&M, every single person said, well, Notre Dame has to be a playoff lock now because they're just not going to lose because they don't play anybody. Now you get into a situation, which is really interesting, where you may have, let's say they do win the rest. You may have an 11-1 Notre Dame team that does not make the playoff because of an ugly
loss.
There's
nobody in this world that is scared of Notre Dame.
No.
I said it last year. I said it even in our very first episode this year. Notre Dame is a pretender.
Correct.
Freeman is a bad coach. I'll say it. I heard somebody actually.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
I forget if it was somebody on The Fan here in Columbus that was talking about this, but they were talking about elite coaches and they mentioned him among that. What has that man done to be considered an elite coach other than, yes, he is the head coach at a historical program?
That doesn't make you automatically a good coach.
You could come in and be a head coach at Ohio State or Michigan. That doesn't make you an elite level coach.
You could go 1-3 against Michigan. That doesn't make you an elite level coach just because you're coaching Ohio State.
Ryan Day is an elite coach. How dare you?
Anyway, thank you, Notre Dame, for a little bit of a balm on a crushing Saturday for me. It doesn't heal all wounds, but boy, does it help a lot. Let's talk Ohio State because you guys played another Division III school this
Michigan.
Week. Which, by the way, I love that after 2 grueling games against MAC opponents, you guys earned a bye week. You guys got to get a little bit of rest. Hey, got to rest
up for the Thundering Herd of Marshall.
Yeah, talk to me about Western Michigan though.
Yeah, Western Michigan came in, and I mean, honestly, what can you say about this game other than it was a perfect game all around? Yeah. You go out there.
No notes if you're Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State goes out there, 683 yards of offense, 12 different receivers caught a pass. By the end of the game, you were on your 3rd string quarterback transfer, Julian Sain, who then goes out and throws a touchdown. Your backup in Devin Brown and Julian Sain both go perfect. They go 7 of 7 combined. I mean, everything Ohio State wanted to do, they did. On defense, it was the first time that they have pitched a shutout in 5 years.
Is it really?
Going all the way back to 2019, it's the last time that they have pitched a shutout. The defense just swarmed. They held Western Michigan to under 100 yards total offense. It was just one of those games. It was fun to watch from the moment you went. There were a ton of explosive offensive plays. There's actually a Quinshon Judkins play where he ripped off an 80-yard touchdown, and it
came back on the hold.
It came back on a hold, which was a hold that didn't really impact the play whatsoever. It was one of those things I heard announcers talking about it after the game on the drive home, where they said it's one of those things, sure, but it wasn't it didn't impact the play. It wasn't a consequential play.
So don't do
it. So they were saying,
don't do it.
They were saying sometimes you see those calls not get called because it doesn't impact anything. They just decided to call it. But
seems like y'all turned out okay.
You finally saw glimpses of what Quinshon Judkins could be in this offense. I think Chip Kelly's play calling looked phenomenal. Will Howard, I thought last week, it was the first week, obviously, so he looked, I don't want to say shaky, but, and I wouldn't say that I was underwhelmed with his performance last week. It was just, all right, there it is. I can see why he's going to be better than McCord as a fit. And this was the game where I walked in and I thought, now I really see it. Jeremiah Smith came out there. He was a stud yet again. He honestly, had he not been underthrown on another pass, would have had another touchdown. Travion Henderson got involved. I mean, just all around, people were making plays. I don't know there's nothing else to say. When you have a team go out there and have 683 yards of offense and pitch a shutout, no notes. Let's do it again on the 21st when we play Marshall.
Well, and the reality is you will, because it's Marshall.
It's Marshall. Marshall beat Notre Dame last year, but it is Notre Dame.
Yeah, and 2 completely different teams also. Yes. Here's the only thing that I'm going to caveat with is I'm still This is obviously a very good football team. Like there's no amount of homerness that can go, well, maybe Ohio State's not that good. They're a good football team.
Yeah.
But I'm also not going to write some of these checks that I know a lot of Ohio State fans are writing right now. You have played not just two bad teams, but two of the worst teams in college football. And Marshall is going to be the third. So until we actually see you play a team with any sort of pulse. Okay. Michigan just played the number 2 team in the country.
Jace.
I do not want to hear anything. No. You don't get to talk about schedule.
We'll talk about it. If your team is undefeated right now, you can talk and have the mic.
No, but I don't think that it would be fair to start writing checks just yet for this Ohio State team because there's nothing to compare it to. Akron is not going to give you any sort of competition. Western's not. Marshall's not. Until you start really getting into Big Ten play, with the exception of Michigan State.
Which we'll find out. I think it's early October they play Iowa.
First weekend of October, correct. First weekend of October you play Iowa, which again, I'm not suggesting Iowa will threaten Ohio State. I'm just saying now we've got a team with a pulse to it. Now when Quinshon Judkins rips off an 80-yard run, it means something. Now when Will Howard is finding Jeremiah Smith downfield, it means something.
Out Iowa 56-0.
But I'm saying that the stat line doesn't make a difference to me because you're playing bottom-feeding NCAA teams.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no.
No, I'm telling you, it does not.
You play whoever plays in front of you. You go out there
That's
and you
not what I'm
showcase your
saying.
talent.
I'm not saying you don't play who's in front of you. I'm saying it's the same thing we said last week, right? Before his first snap on the field, Jeremiah Smith was the best wide receiver Ohio State's ever seen. That's the type of stuff that I go, stop writing these checks.
Having watched Jeremiah Smith play.
He has played.
Having watched Jeremiah Smith in person.
And Western Michigan are not known for their
freshman,
secondary.
As a freshman.
Brother, you and I could go run a route and score a touchdown on these teams.
I am not saying Manchester. I am not saying that he's better than Marvin Harrison Jr. But if I'm going off the film that I currently have, the sky's the limit. There's no doubt in my mind, if he continues to progress, if he continues to play the way he has been playing, best Ohio State receiver in history.
See, he's 2 games into 2 MAC opponents.
And You're right. It could change.
This is the reason.
I'm going off of strict game film. What have I seen? Because if you're saying that, why is Ibuka had himself a game? But why is Ibuka not doing the exact? It's the same. I mean, that's a guy that's projected to be a first-round talent.
But number one, Emeka Ibuka is not a first-round talent. I think the last 3 years have shown you that.
He was hurt. He was hurt last year.
He's made of glass.
You hush your mouth. You are reaching so hard. There were about 4 or 5 NFL scouts in front of me. And as I was walking in, there was a guy from the Patriots that was walking in. And the lady that was checking us in said, "Who are you here to see?" And he laughed and he said, "I'm here to see the freshman," is exactly how he said it. So you have guys that are NFL scouts that are coming in and they are straight up eyeballing this guy. And I think Dylan Davis, a guy that we see all the time at the press box. Dill. Yeah, great guy. He even tweeted and said, "I think it's officially time to start saying NFL teams are going to start saying we need to suck for Jeremiah Smith," because
Dylan Davis drank the Jeremiah Smith Kool-Aid before the snap.
And I am right there with him. Pass the cup.
And again, this is not me saying that he's not a phenomenal athlete. He is. I'm saying you have to account for the competition that you're playing. And so there's a difference between saying, man, this kid has a ton of talent. We want to keep an eye on him. And saying, this is the greatest receiver to ever walk through these doors. There's a jump there. And I'm saying, stop making that jump.
I think you're allowed to buy into the hype. The dude is legit. Dude is making plays as a freshman out there. And sky's the limit. Dude is a baller.
Ohio State does not play a game this week, which really they didn't play a game this past week.
I mean, if that's what they were out there and threw a football at times.
So bye week for Ohio State, they will get Marshall coming up. I mean, what's one thing? Okay, so obviously, any way you want to slice it, it's still a really good performance from Ohio State.
Yeah.
What's one thing at this point? And again, all the things that I've already said about competition, bottom feeders, whatever. What's one thing that concerns you? One thing you need to see improvement on, let's say by the time you get to Big Ten play, and I'm not talking about Michigan State, actual Big Ten teams like Iowa, the Nebraskas, stuff like that.
Yeah, I still think offensive line, although they had themselves a game this past weekend, I think that's going to remain the number one question throughout the entire season, honestly. The defense, the past 2 games has been outstanding. The receivers, I thought against Akron, it was kind of a Jeremiah Smith only show. I was actually really happy this past week to see Carnell Tate. Brandon Ennis actually was the second leading receiver, I believe, or it might have been Ibuka. Ibuka might have been number 2, but all the receivers were getting touches. Ibuka had himself a nice game. The running back duo honestly had a great game to combined. I think I'd like to see a little bit more consistency from the offensive line. I'd like to see Ibuka making a little bit more of an impact. I know he's coming off an injury from last season. And then I think I want to see, I don't even know if I want to say that I need to see more from Travion Henderson, but you saw a lot more Quinshon Judkins this past game. Henderson was still excellent. I don't know. I think I'm just going to narrow it down to offensive line. Yeah. The other ones are me reaching for another reason. The offensive line is going to be the biggest thing. And then I think Will Howard so far has shown me that he's been the good guy to go to.
Yeah.
I just have to see it in a big game.
And really that's kind of where I'm trying to drive to is I want to see this Ohio. If I'm trying to analyze, not is Ohio State good, but how good are they?
Yeah, it's the same.
You're not going to learn. And again, whether that's on a team level, whether that's Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Quinshon Judkins, these are all good players and good teams.
Yeah.
But how good are they?
You saw the
argument. You have no idea yet.
You saw the argument again, and you're probably going to hear it all season long because McCord went out there against Georgia Tech, who's number 23 in the nation, and he had himself a heck of a ball game. And so now you see all these Syracuse people, all these Ohio State guys, even when Will Howard has a good game, they're going, yeah, but did you see what McCord did down the road? And if that's the argument you're still making, you don't know ball.
It's just, it's an apples to oranges comparison.
I like how you did that. See, that was intentional. Don't let him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, exactly right. Because Syracuse plays a completely different conference schedule. Everything.
Georgia Tech was ranked, but it's Georgia Tech.
It's Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's ranked because Florida State was way too hyped in the offseason. Mm-hmm. That's it. Now, Kyle McCord looks really good, but again, you cannot take that, lift his performance at Syracuse and drop it into Ohio State. We've seen the movie. Here's something we can both agree on. We've seen the Kyle McCord movie. And we don't need to see a sequel.
And I don't think anybody's trying to say Kyle McCord is a bad quarterback. I think they're saying he's not the right fit for Ohio State.
I'm saying he's not a great quarterback. He is last year it was, hey, Kyle McCord is firmly fine. And this guy over here said, I'd rather have him than JJ McCarthy.
Still would.
You wouldn't.
Still would.
Is it because of the injury?
It's because he no longer has an ACL or whatever it is.
Hey, we want to say a big thanks to our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction for sponsoring this podcast. Maybe you feel a little bit like Dabo Sweeney and Clemson, like you know what you're doing is not working and you really need to transfer in. You get that transfer in, a little bit of help. Our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction are the portal to a successful project. Aaron and his team, they've been doing this a long time. You will be wowed at the finished product. Great communication, open, honest. You've got a home, church, or business build. Go with the folks with integrity in their name. ElevatedIntegrity.com. Aaron, we're grateful for you. And a big change this year as well for the podcast. We are part of the Varsity Network. You can download the Varsity Network app. Varsity Network is powered by Learfield and a must-have for every college football fan. The app, by the way, free to download in the App Store and Google Play Store. You can enjoy live college football games and podcasts just like this one. You can even search for your favorite team or search for the Rivalry Podcast in the Varsity Network app. And finally, you can support the Rivalry Podcast with exclusive merch. I've got my shirt on today. If you're watching on YouTube, you can go see that for yourself at rivalpod.com. Just click on support. I know we're just about to order another batch, but again, these keep selling out. So like the pre-orders keep rolling in. So go get yours. These are fantastic. We've also got blog articles up there each week, YouTube versions of the episode, chance to support the podcast, and
some pictures
more
from the games, all sorts of stuff.
Some beautiful shots that you got at the shoe from Western Michigan this past weekend. We've got games from last year as well. All of that waiting for you at rivalpod.com. And whether you're listening through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Varsity Network app, make sure that you subscribe so that you can get updates every time a new episode drops.
Are you ready? Are you ready now?
I don't want to talk about.
Okay. I'll gladly start.
There was no Michigan game this weekend, which is weird because it was scheduled.
There was a game in Michigan.
So, all right. So Michigan, Texas, Texas 31-12, which looks bad and yet somehow looks better than the game actually was.
That's one of my notes was this game. the score doesn't even really reflect.
This is one that for me that is number one. I've got to eat a slice of humble pie here because I gave Michigan. I thought Michigan would win this game. I know that
you sent a picture.
Yeah,
before the game that said Michigan has never lost a game when I've been in the building.
Well, psych. It was a green screen, and I actually was in my living room. So yeah, so slice of humble pie for me because I really thought, and the hype for Texas across the nation, the media, everybody was picking Texas. I really believed in Michigan's ground game, giving them a chance to win this game. I didn't think it had to be fancy. It wasn't going to be the J.J. McCarthy slinging the ball left and right show. But what Michigan has done traditionally is just lean on you till you cry uncle. And I expected them to be able to do that.
My initial question for you before you really break down and analyze this game.
Oh, I've broken down already. Trust me, I broke down several times this weekend.
Because you were at the game, obviously. You got there a little bit early. Game day was there.
It was hyped, man.
The mood. So that was my question. Yeah. The mood overall. Absolute was there a sense of confidence from the fan base, or was it just hype that there's a lot going on and it's a big spectacle, or was it genuinely belief? The vibes were high.
It reminded me a lot of 2021 Ohio State, where you're coming in and I don't remember. I think the spread for Ohio State in 21 was 6.5. I think they were 6.5 point underdogs to Ohio State. So this was 7.5, somewhere in there. I felt like the vibes were real similar. Big game, you're an underdog, you're at home, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so there's kind of there's that hype, there's that nervous energy, but also there's that hype of we know it'd be an upset, but we think we can actually pull this thing off.
Yeah.
And you come out with that first drive of the game where Texas, I think, went 3 for 3 on third down. But again, Michigan's defense was making them work for it. And then Auburn shanks it wide right. And that you could feel the crowds kind of start to get riled up going, that's exactly what you needed. Mm-hmm. Texas just took 6-7 minutes off the clock and got no points out of it. And then Michigan's offense took the field. And this is where...
That's what you called it?
This is where, for me, I mean, there's just so many questions on both sides of the ball. But when Michigan, I want to say they went 3 and out to start that. I don't know. I don't know where the next step is for the Michigan offense. And I'll get to the defense here in a second too, because they were beyond faultless in this game. For the Michigan offense, what concerns me is I don't know that they have an answer for this. Sam Webb described it as they don't have an identity. And I think that's exactly it. You are not obviously going to be the J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum offense from years past. You shouldn't have to be, but you've got to be able to be something. Mm-hmm. And, there was some chatter about why Kalel Mullings did not get as many touches as Donovan Edwards. That's a concern because I think we've all kind of established Kalel Mullings is probably the guy who needs to be the guy. There's concern, obviously, at the quarterback position. It sucks to jump on Davis Warren because Davis Warren is such a feel good story, right? Here's a kid highly recruited out of high school, diagnosed with leukemia, beats cancer, has to sit behind guys like Cade McNamara and McCarthy for years, now gets his shot and everybody jumps on him. And I hate that, but also you're the quarterback at Michigan. This is part of what comes with the territory. And so he's the easiest kid in the world to root for. But I don't think he's the guy. And unfortunately, the only ones that seem to think he's still the guy are the ones with clipboards and headsets that seem to matter.
Here's the issue, because I had everything you said I have in my notes. I don't know. We're going to agree on a lot of this. The offense had zero identity.
Yep.
Texas scored on 5 of its first 7 possessions. Could have been 6 had they not missed the field goal.
Sure.
So this defense that was hyped up, and granted, Texas has a very good offense. That is beside the point.
Yeah.
But you go out there, you're not going to win a big game like that when you're allowing an offense to go out there and score 5 of its first 7 possessions.
Well,
but the thing is, you were still kind of in it. And here's where I understand
I'll get to the defense in a moment too, because I got some thoughts on the defense.
Well, and here's what I understand the strategy behind this a little bit, but I also don't get it, because your guys' identity the past 3 years has been, we're going to run it down your throat until you say no. And this seemed to be the case. I thought, honestly, Cleo Mullins and Donovan Edwards weren't having terrible games running the ball. They didn't get the touches that they needed to really showcase it. Donovan Edwards, I think, had 8 touches. Yeah. Khalil had 6.
Well, and a lot of that too comes down to you went down so early.
You're playing from behind, but they started. I mean, they were down 14-3, and still, it was just one of those things. I felt like you went away from your identity, which has always been, we're going to ground and pound, and that's going to be the go-to on offense. And then once you got behind a score, you completely went away from it, and it became, we're going to let Davis Warren get us back in this. And I don't think anybody in that stadium ever thought that he was a guy that was going to be the person to win big games. What's baffling is, even after his poor play, and I think you and we've talked about this numerous times now, at the spring game that we were able to go, that's the only time I've seen Michigan in person this year. We thought we understood why Alex Orji was, at the time, I think we both were going to say QB1. We could see it because of what he brought to the offense from a running standpoint. Well, and then you see, but we thought Davis Warren actually had a really good game.
He threw the ball well.
We thought he was going to make it interesting. We didn't think that it was a competition.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing Davis Warren go out there and be the clear starter, and Alex Orji doesn't even really seem to be a part of the game plan.
And here's my big thing. Like, Alex Orji got in for 2 plays, both third downs,
nothing.
Both quarterback power. I mean, just you are telling every single person in that stadium, we're going to run the ball with Alex. Mm-hmm. That does him no favors. That does Davis no favors. My big thing is going to be, and again, as far as you can tell, right, Davis Warren's going to be the guy. Okay. There's a side note on that I'll get to here in a second, but what I can't for the life of me understand is, if you don't trust Davis Warren to throw the ball downfield. Mm-hmm. Now, Grant, you can say, well, he did a few times. Sure, late in the game, he had some success doing it. But if you watch the game, they clearly don't trust him to take shots down the field. It's a lot of dink and dunk short stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. If they don't trust him to throw the ball down the field, and I frankly don't know that they should. Okay. A lot of poor decisions from Davis. Then the knock on Alex Orji has been, well, he can run. Yeah. But he can't throw super well. I've got really bad news about Davis Warren. He can't throw the ball super well. So even if Davis is technically a better passer, if you don't trust Davis Warren to throw the ball with any sort of significance, why would you not bring Orji in and at least threaten in the run game? Because now you've got a guy who's backing up, Davis Warren is not a run game threat, and you really don't trust him to do much of significance throwing the ball. Why would you not bring Alex Orji in, let him threaten in the run, because we've seen what he can do when he gets going. And if you're just going to dink and dunk the ball off anyway, let him do that. At least give yourself an opportunity, because listen, full credit to Texas. This is the number 2 team in the country. Mm-hmm. Okay. That also does Michigan no favors, by the way. Texas is way better than people thought they were. Michigan's also way worse than people thought they were.
Not worse than I thought they were.
You don't count.
I absolutely count.
But you've still got a massive schedule slate coming up. Well, you're going to have a top 10, fringe top 10 right now, but you'll have a top 10 USC in a week. You're going to have number 3 Ohio State. You've got top 10 USC, Ohio State, and Oregon all still on that schedule. By the way, you still have to go to Washington. You've got an Illinois team who's hanging around the top 25 as well. And you've got a rivalry game in Michigan State. And I know Michigan State is not worth salt, but I'm saying you've still got a schedule to play. Mm-hmm. Does Davis Warren trotting out there as your starter give you confidence? The answer is no.
And here's the
Alex Orji. Does that give you? It gives me more confidence, because I
gives you some excitement to maybe that there's going to be something different. New.
If you have to drop back and if you have to call an RPO every single stinking play, where it's Alex Orji and the options are either I hand to Khalil Mullins or Dono, I keep it, or I dink and dunk it. Every single play, do it. Whatever the play call is right now with Davis is not working. I at least go, you know what? we might have a shot with an athlete like Alex Orji out there. I do not feel confident with Davis Ward. And again, easiest kid in the world to root for, and I hate saying it, but he's not the guy. And I don't know why we keep insisting he is.
Yeah, and the bad thing is, I don't know if I think Alex Orji is either. If I'm looking at the depth chart, and I'm taking this as an Ohio State fan, I think this is very similar to last year. Although I think Kyle McCord is exponentially better than I think you guys would kill to have Kyle McCord on your team right now.
I think, he'd be an upgrade over where we're at, man. Yeah.
But I think it's the same in the sense of the gap between who your starter is and who the coaching staff believes the backup is.
You're saying like the Alex Orji, Devin Brown type thing?
I think. And I've said it for years, and I'll still stand by it. I think Devin Brown's a terrible quarterback. He's probably a super nice guy.
Alex Orji is a much better quarterback than Devin Brown. But I get your point.
But I'm saying to the point of you're not seeing in a game where they struggled, and Alex Orji's only seen the field for 2 plays.
Both of them telegraphed
runs. Tells me a lot about what they think of him in terms of where he's at on the depth chart. Yeah. And because I think if it was really a 50-50 when Davis Warren was out there throwing interceptions and wasn't moving the ball, you'd have seen a switch. And so I'm looking at that the same way that I'm looking at Ohio State's quarterback room and in the bowl game last year. And I think had Kyle McCord played against Missouri, who knows what would have happened? It would have been a more competitive game. Sure. But the second that we saw Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz go out there, this offense is going to be a dud. And it was.
But if you're Michigan, though, you've got to give me something. And again, I also understand. And every Michigan beat has said the same thing. I get it. Basically, you flipped over 10 offensive starters. I get that. You've got new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, JJ McCarthy, Blake Corum, Cornelius Johnson, Roman Wilson, AJ Barner, Trente Jones, Drake Nugent, Zach Zinter, Trevor Keegan. I get it. Yes, you got to play Texas in week 2. Not doing you any favors with that type of flip. And yet, you still have got to be able to look like a competent football team.
And that's what I was going to say.
You didn't even have to. Michigan didn't even have to win this game. No. But to look like that is deeply concerning to me.
There's a difference, like you said, losing all those guys. If you look at top tier programs that Michigan is, you reload.
Defending national champions.
You reload. You don't go out there, and that's not to say, to your point, that's not saying you have to go out there and beat teams like this now. No. You can't go out there and get absolutely waxed like that.
Especially at home.
I mean, the gap between who you guys had and who you were last year to this year is such a universally different team.
Well, and you knew that it was going to be like I think
for sure
everyone knew there was going to be a drop off. And by the way, if there is anyone who mutters the words Connor Stallions, you have no idea how to play football. You know nothing about football. Here's what I think
has made the biggest difference for you guys as far as your offense.
The 10 names and the 3 coaches I just mentioned, that's why you have a drop off. Period.
For sure. I think losing Jesse Mentor, I think losing Harbaugh, obviously. Losing the players is a no-brainer.
But frankly, Ben Herbert as the strength and conditioning coach got brought up, and I went, because have you seen Michigan try to tackle? It just looks bad.
But here's where I think the biggest drop-off is you guys were going to rely a lot on Donovan Edwards and on Khalil Mullins. And I don't think either of them have really done. I mean, Khalil Mullins has been better, but I don't think either of them have really come out and done a whole lot to help your offense.
To your point, I think that so many things went poorly for Michigan on Saturday that playing from behind. Absolutely, you're right. Absolutely affected. 6 snaps for Khalil Mullins cannot happen. It just can't.
No,
and again, I'll shout out my boy. I'll shout out the boys at MGO Blog for mentioning that in their own podcast. That can't happen.
You can't have Khalil Mullins and Donovan Edwards, the best player on your offense, and supposedly best player in Donovan Edwards, cannot leave a game of that magnitude with 8 carries.
Correct.
Inexcusable.
Well, and I mentioned this on Twitter at Rival Pod during the game when your best offensive player, who's going to be Colston Loveland, who is a Mackey Award watch list. I
probably going to win it.
You got to have a quarterback who gets you the ball, though. But even when he had the ball, I mean, he had a good game against Fresno. He also had a key drop. It's like that happens. I get it. Shake it off, move on. He fumbled the football with no contact.
One of the weirdest fumbles I've seen.
That's kind of when that stuff that he's not the reason they lost this game, but when that stuff starts to happen, that's when you know something's just not quite right there. And I said I'd get to the defense, and now's as good a time as any. Michigan's defense, it's not the same concern I have about the offense. Okay.
No, the offense
there. The offense, there's a talent gap on offense, and I don't know how to fix that. At least on the defense, I can go, there are some dogs out there. They did not play well against Texas. Some of that, you've got to give credit to Texas's offense. Some of that you also have to give credit to Texas's defense, who made Michigan's offense inept. They looked gassed. They had very little rest. They also just did not play well. I mean, Texas called saw everybody and their mom singing the praises of Sark for calling that game. Phenomenal game call. Phenomenal game call. There's talent there at least that can fix some of this, but you don't have time to really ramp up to that, right? You've got USC coming in a couple weeks. You've got the schedule we talked about. There's got to be some ownership here from the defense to go, we can't rely on the performance of the last handful of years. Michigan's had an elite defense for years. I still think this is a very good defense. That's not an elite defense. I thought it was heading into the Texas game. An elite defense, again, you're not going to shut down Texas's offense, but you've got to make them work a little harder for that. I get that the offense didn't do him any favors, but there's a lot of stuff that's got to be cleaned up on the defensive side of the ball. Just all around, at the end of the day, just a rough go for Michigan. What's the most frustrating for me is, how do you move forward? And the answer is, I don't know.
You schedule somebody like Arkansas State for a feel-good game.
That'll knock on all the wood in Columbus. That's going to help.
Here's my last thought, and it's maybe a little bit of a prediction. I think Jaden Davis is the quarterback by the end of the year. I think if you guys go into the season, I think it's too early to do it yet. Although personally, I probably would.
Yeah, because
I think right now.
Let me pause you for a half second, because I think that is an important point, though. The season is not over.
No.
Michigan lost to a team that very well may win the national championship. The season's not over. But there's also a reality of what do you have coming and how are you preparing now, because you don't get ramp up,
and that offense,
you don't get the ramp up games.
That offense isn't going to win you games.
You got to figure it out now.
Washington,
USC, but say what you're saying about Jaden Davis. I just think that's important to the ledge is there. Back off the ledge a little bit. We're 2 games in.
This is one of those things where I think continuing to it's so early, you don't want to sacrifice your season by putting an inexperienced guy, because it's not over. But also, to me, it feels like you are sacrificing your season if you continue to trot out Davis Warren into games. Davis Warren isn't going to beat you, USC. Using Davis Warren, and I'll say using Davis Warren and Alex Orji in the way that they're currently being used, it's not going to get done. A death sentence. If I'm looking ahead, you're trying to think of the future.
Yeah,
and Davis is a highly touted recruit. He's there. That is going to be the guy moving forward. After seeing the offense this past weekend, if that trend continues, I don't think you make the move now. I personally would, just because I don't have faith in them. I don't think you do it now, but I think if you lose to USC and you got 2 losses, I think the conversation heats up a little bit about Alex Orji and Davis Warren are getting sat, and I think I'm bringing in the freshmen, and I think I'm gonna go through the growing pains now,
because in Jaden Davis is the guy. 2025, it's Jaden Davis.
And so I would rather him get some stuff under his belt.
Yeah.
And I would rather him get comfortable. I'd rather have him go through some big games. You're going to lose games with him. He's inexperienced.
But you're going to lose games with using Warren and Orji as they're currently being used is going to lose you games also.
And so I think the benefit of starting Davis now, or at least if you suffer another loss, starting him now is going to benefit you more in the future than continuing to let him ride the bench just so you can let Davis Warren and Alex Orji play.
I mean,
my hot take is by the end of the year, you're going to see Jaden Davis out there at QB1.
If you're not in kind of the depth chart recruiting world, and we kind of just barely touch our toes in that, Jaden Davis is kind of the JJ McCarthy recruit. Okay?
And I don't think that he's far in the depth chart because he's not good. I think they're trying to protect any years of eligibility.
They're looking at red shirts and stuff like that.
So don't get it wrong. If you're like, well, yeah, he's not even playing behind those guys.
Now
they are preserving that.
There's also a reality where chances are the kid is probably not ready. Like if he were ready, I think he'd have won the battle in fall camp, and he'd be the guy. But yet, I think you're raising a good point. The other side of this, and again, this was thrown out there, so I'll do my own digging after I say this, but The other factor here is that Jack Tuttle's coming off of an injury.
Mm-hmm.
He was, and I'll have to double check this. Rumor was he was listed as questionable, not out for the Texas game. Let's say that Jack Tuttle gets healthy. That now,
awesome man.
You're exactly right.
Awesome
That's
man.
now we're talking about a Kyle McCord type situation, a Cade McNamara type situation. That's Jack Tuttle. Now, does Michigan beat Texas with that? No. But again, the point was, and this sounds ridiculous to say, but hear me, the point was not even necessarily to beat Texas. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's the goal. That's what you're trying to do. Michigan didn't need to beat Texas.
You needed to prove to the world that you could still compete with the big boys.
Correct. That's exactly it. Jack Tuttle would have helped you do that if he's healthy. Now, I'm throwing that out there just to say, we're talking about, hey, what if about Jaden Davis if things don't start shaping up? By the end of the year, if Tuttle's healthy, you might see that kid starting. And so that's where, as we're looking, for the rivalry, as we're looking to the end of November, and I'm seeing, obviously it's a rivalry, so you're seeing a lot of Ohio State chatter, which is interesting because you haven't beat Michigan since 2019.
I've seen
but
Ohio
you
State's
saw Braxton Miller and Garrett Wilson, these guys.
You follow a lot of Ohio State fans.
Unfortunately, the rivalry Twitter does, and I get subjected to a lot of this.
Fault. That's my fault.
I unfollowed Braxton Miller, by the way.
But Ohio State did go to 17.5-point favorites for the game in November.
And that's what I'm saying is that it means something, but it also doesn't mean anything because these are going to be two completely different teams, and I think especially on the Michigan side, will God help us be a different looking football team. They'll obviously be a more experienced football team by the time you get there. The other big question mark is you have no idea who's going to be quarterback at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Could be an Alex Orji situation. Could be Jack Tuttle. Could be Jaden. It could be just about anybody except Jaden Dunn.
We haven't even touched on the game this week because I think.
Oh, do we need
low key? If I'm Michigan, I think you guys are going to beat Arkansas State. I'm not really concerned with your guys' ability to beat them soundly. This is a game where I'm throwing in Davis a little bit towards the end of the game to get some reps in.
If you are convinced that. Well, yeah.
It's still a rule that if you have 4 games or something, then you can still be a red shirt and
as far as I know, that's fair.
This would be a game where if it gets ugly,
why not?
I'm throwing him in there so he at least gets a feel for what it feels like to play in the big house, to get some game experience.
The only reason,
might need him.
The only reason that I would hesitate that is if we're looking at this and again, as much as I'm saying, hey, switch it up. If Davis Warren, whether we want it or not, if he is really going to be the guy, you want him with as many live reps as possible. Competition, yeah. Arkansas State, we're talking about bottom dwellers like Akron and Marshall, whatever. Yeah. That's Arkansas State, okay? Fresno State was not that. Arkansas State is. You want as many live reps as you possibly can for the guy, if that's going to be your guy. Yeah, I've got Michigan. I don't even remember what I told our producer. I've got Michigan. I think I said 38-0, 34-0, somewhere in there. Again, this is a get right game. Arkansas State doesn't do much. By the way, Dominic Zveda, Arkansas State transfer.
Wow.
This is revenge tour.
Who's to say?
Zveda bing, Zveda boom.
I hate when you say that.
Let's go.
And I know it's exactly what you're going to. Yeah, yep, I see it coming from a mile away.
Well, I mean, you've got to have Michigan in this, yeah? You've got to have Michigan in this, right?
Michigan? Look, after what I saw, they're lucky I pick them for anything else ever again. I do have Michigan. I got it 35, but I have Arkansas State scoring 10.
Okay.
I think
that's fine.
And here's the only reason why I think Arkansas State might even be able to slightly move the ball.
Yeah.
Is this past weekend, it showed me you guys struggle a little bit when it's a mobile quarterback this year.
Sure. Yeah.
I thought Quinn Ewers being able to escape the pocket helped tremendously.
Yeah, mobile being not necessarily a runner, but elusive.
He's not a runner, but he's elusive.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think Arkansas State, Jalen Rayner, he's their leading passer and leading rusher right now at the quarterback position. Yeah. I think
that also ain't Quinn Ewers though.
No, and I'm not trying to say it is.
But I gotcha.
I think that they'll get 10.
Well, a lot. The vision from the defense was not ideal. Okay, so I think that's fair.
And here's the point for this game that I think if I'm a Michigan guy, I'm really looking at is Arkansas State gives up just a ton on the ground.
Sure.
I think I wrote down the stats. So against Tulsa, they gave up 163 yards rushing. Against Central Arkansas, they gave
real
up
school
235 yards on the ground. Neither of those schools are remotely good.
No.
If Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards doesn't put up 100 yards this game, I am Xing him off of my NCAA 25 cover because how dare you, after a 10-year-long wait, put that trash on there?
Listen, I don't care who runs for what or who throws for, just win the game. Here's the thing. It's not going to tell me a whole lot about Michigan.
No.
But so
you got to see some rhythm though. You can still see some improvements.
I mean, give me something to clap about, and let's move on and get ready for USC because it's going to be a tough one. Rutgers for the Rose Bowl, real quick. Rutgers gets Akron this past weekend. I assume they won. I didn't look because I don't care.
Win. It was like 49-17. It was a blowout. Kyle Monangai had a monstrous game again. Put Monangai in the Heisman, you cowards. Yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was a little bit close for a while, and then they decided they were done with it.
The Shiano meter for Rutgers to Rose Bowl.
It's going to stay the same. It's a 4 out of 5. The next game they have a bye week. Then they play at Virginia Tech. So that'll be the first test of the year. We'll see how it goes.
That's great. Stupid genius upset picks of the week. Neither of us did very well in this. I had Michigan. You had Colorado. So
yeah, yikes.
Yeah. My favorite bit of the Colorado thing, by the way, was after the game, people yelling at Shedeur, asking him, what time is it? Phenomenal.
Here's
so good.
You go with yours.
I hate Colorado. So stupid genius again. Got to be at least a 5-point underdog. If you get the pick right, you get however many points the underdog spread was. Okay, pretty simple. Give me. First of all, there's not a lot of great games.
I think
this weekend.
I know which one you were going to go with, and I did not.
Well, it's not Wisconsin, Alabama. I can tell you that.
I debated it though.
Okay.
I debated it.
Give me Oregon State over Oregon.
I almost went with that.
Civil War. I still. Here's the thing. I still buy Oregon as a legitimate team, but also number one, there's not a ton of great upsets this week.
Yeah.
Number two, I mean, you still struggled with Idaho, and Boise State's a pretty good football team. Yeah. But again, a last second field goal.
Struggled against them, and it was at home though.
Until I really, I still think Oregon's elite. Until I really figure out until you kind of get going though. I mean, this is an early season upset potential. The Civil War. This is a big rivalry game. Why not? Why not Oregon State?
Right?
Oregon State is plus 14 in this game, so we'll see about that.
I thought you maybe were going to go Arizona over Kansas State for a little bit.
Is that a 5-point spread though?
It is. I think Kansas State is 7.5 favorites.
That's a more realistic pick.
Mine.
Oh, you didn't go with that one.
I did not go with that.
Oh, what did you do? What did you do? You're not very good at this.
I learned my lesson. Anytime
somebody says I've learned my lesson, they absolutely have not.
I have learned my lesson. All last season, there were 2 teams that I feel like I routinely picked to be on my upset team for my stupid genius. And it was always the Florida Gators. I picked them, I think, 1,000 times, it felt like, and they never pulled through. And Colorado. I picked them an awful lot. I've got Colorado State over Colorado this week.
Okay.
And if you've listened to the podcast before today, you would know I have stuck up for Colorado for a while. Yeah, I love Coach Prime.
I could not be more opposite from you.
I think Shedeur Sanders is a great quarterback. I think Travis Hunter is a great quarterback. That changed, or a great receiver and corner. That changed this weekend. And I think
it's amazing when they're not playing an FCS team. What can happen?
I don't think the team overall is good, but I really enjoy watching those players play.
So you picked Colorado State, who got smacked by 50 by Texas.
It was Texas. Could you imagine what Texas would do to this Colorado team? I would have to turn my TV off and throw it out a window. Playing their theme music and
dink around and discover,
smashing the ground.
Dink around and discover.
Oh man! So I've got Colorado State over Colorado. Colorado right now 7.5 point favorites.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. So it still counts.
Listen, I would love to see that.
Here's where it fell off for me. When with 2 minutes to go in that game this past weekend against Nebraska, you watch Shedeur Sanders walking off the field, and the game is still going on. Then he goes into his press conference and he proceeds to blame the entire offensive line and says, "Well, how many times did Dylan Raiola get touched?" That is not a leader. No. That is not who I want a QB1 to be. If I'm the offensive line, I am pulling remember the Titans, and I am letting them through the line. every single time. You can go ahead and scramble. I'm going to hurt your draft stock. I'm not blocking for trash after that. That is the least motivating thing I've ever seen. Last year, this was a close game in Colorado State.
Well, last year, this was the game where
we were coming back from Michigan. I remember
this. Colorado was like 3 touchdown favorites, beat Colorado State in like triple overtime or something. And the ESPN or ABC announcer was screaming, "Do you believe now that it took you 3 overtimes to win a game you were favored by 21?
And so
I do not believe now.
I'm officially off the train. I am not a Colorado stan anymore. I have joined the side of Jace. Finally, it's the only side we can agree on.
Let's go.
So give me Colorado State. Give me the Rams.
Man, I love that. Shout out to my boy Drew, the only Colorado State fan I know.
You know one?
Yeah.
Those exist?
Yeah. You got 2 more, buddy. 2 more.
Wow.
Should be a fast, again, not great games this weekend, but it's college football. Okay?
All of them are great.
It's college football.
Look,
all of
I was
them are
watching
great.
like Delaware State the other day. I just need it injected into my veins.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening right now. Rivalpod.com, the hub for all things the rivalry. RivalPod across social media. Thank you for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for supporting. Get yourself a cool shirt while you're at it. Rivalpod.com. Thanks for being here. Go Blue.
Go Bucks.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit RivalPod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now for new episodes every Tuesday. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.